Very pleased to be here to join you today to talk a little bit about this, the issue of internationalization. You have an outstanding institution here, and you have indeed, as the President said, shown leadership in this area long before it became fashionable or topical to internationalize and to globalize. I want to talk a little bit about the broader context in which our international programs operate. As you know, the President Obama has set a challenging goal for the nation to once again become the most educated nation in the world by the year 2020. And specifically, we're trying to increase the proportion of Americans from 40 to 60% that have some form of post-secondary education. And it does include certificates, associate degrees, and undergraduate degrees and beyond. And we have really our rate of college achievement has plateaued for a while the rest of the world has caught up with us and in some cases overtaken us. We are now 9th in the world in terms of the proportion of 24 to 39-year-olds that have college degrees. So we have to improve, and that means basically we need 8 million additional graduates to achieve this goal. In this economy, as you know, a college degree is more important than ever. I was watching Meet the Press last weekend, and Tom Friedman was on it, in fact. But they started, and it was very clear in his remarks. I was really cheering him on that education is absolutely the key strategic priority for any country to remain globally competitive or achieve global competitiveness in this 21st century. And they prefaced their conversation by showing a very telling chart that showed that currently in this tough economy, college graduates, the rate of unemployment with college graduates is slightly over 5%, and the rate of unemployment for high school graduates is something like 16% plus. So even in this tough economy, even when some people are beginning to question the value of a college degree, is it really worth it? Issues of affordability are being discussed and so on. It's very clear that a college education is still a very, very attractive imperative for young people entering the workforce and for having, of course, as we know as academics, a much richer, rewarding life and a better, a more multifaceted way of connecting with your community and contributing to it. So really, all the signs point in that direction. We have the practical argument, but it's also, as we know, it's also something that's desperately needed in our society. Frankly, watching the level of political discourse in Washington really only reinforces my conviction that we need to raise the educational level of our country. So the President, when it comes to higher education, the key priority for us has been to preserve the expansion of the Pell Grant that has taken place. That's been the top priority, to keep it at a maximum of $5,550. We've had to make some compromises to do that in some other areas, such as a second Pell Grant, which we're proposing to phase out. But there's also been a tremendous expansion in direct lending. And in spite of all these efforts, still Pell Grants cover less of the average cost of a college education now than when it was first developed. So this is indeed a very high priority. So as you know, we suffered severe and frankly, unexpected cuts in support to international programs in the continuing resolution that closed out the budget year. This was, in fact, a surprise for many of us, but was trying to reach me. I have to tell you that there has also been some soul searching within the department, and certainly the President's proposed budget for 2012, which is still the official position that we're taking, calls for restoring the funding of international programs to the 2010 levels. Realistically, though, that's going to be a heavy lift given the budget situation that we're in, the political climate in Washington. And I have to share with you that as I came to Washington, I found that there was what's happened there is that there's a lot of turnover, and people that come in don't necessarily know the history, or sometimes they're led by anecdotes, and conventional wisdom about certain programs. And so there has been, I would say that if push comes to shove, some of the people both on the Hill and in the administration need to be educated about the value that these programs add and the role that they play. We have, let me just share this with you, that we, for the past couple of months, in cooperation with the Director of the Office of International Affairs in the Secretary's Office, we have been developing an international strategy for the Department of Education that tries to tie together all the different activities that have international aspects to them throughout the department. And clearly the programs that we manage in the Office of Postsecondary Education is where the bulk of the program money is for international activities, but there are others as well. And we do collaborate with the Department of State and so forth. So we've been doing some fresh systematic thinking and articulating of the rationale for international programs to try to make a stronger case, as well as educate people who may not be as familiar with the international programs, and finally to also help align our international programs with the priorities of the department and with the administration. So looking at that, we've developed a couple of dimensions to use to describe or analyze different activities and programs. One is broad impact versus deep expertise, and the other one is national security versus global competencies for our students. So those are the two sort of axes that we're trying to analyze activities that we do, prioritize them, and also articulate the case for why those types of activities need to happen. So when it comes to the broad dimension, the idea is that is looking at programs and activities to see how much of an impact, how broadly do they affect all of the students across the country. When we look at deep, we're talking about deep expertise, deep abilities, such as the ones that are present in your centers, international centers here. And then when you look at the purpose, the ultimate objective, we basically have two major sort of tracks. One is the national security rationale, which is clearly behind our support for critical languages and languages that are rare, especially, that wouldn't otherwise be taught. And the other one, the developing of global competencies, is the need that we all know we have now to develop global competencies in all of our students, so that it's no longer something that is the province of specialists, but really has to be diffused throughout the curriculum of all of our institutions of higher education, and even K-12 as well. So, and so sometimes people assume that deep goes with national security and broad goes with global competencies, but that's really not the case, because in order to have that capacity to impart the global competencies to a broad student body, you need to have centers of excellence, of deep expertise that are able to cascade their knowledge and skills to, in other words, to teach the teachers, train the trainers, and so forth. So there's really arguments for, on both counts, on the counts of developing global competence and the count of national security. There are arguments for maintaining deep expertise in a number of institutions. So, so that's kind of a little bit the way we're trying to structure our thinking. This international strategy has not yet been officially adopted by the department, so it's still in progress. But I thought I'd share that with you, and sort of anticipate a little bit what we think is going to be the narrative or the argument that we're going to develop to try to shore up support for international programs. And I should say also to help inform how we move these programs forward in the future. So one of the things that, one line of thinking, for example, would be that if in the past we focused on the national security rationale as one of the most important motives for having programs, there was a tendency then to be oriented more towards developing centers of excellence and deep expertise. And so the federal government would tend to put its money in the strongest institutions to develop that capacity. Many times the number of people, for example, that would have to be trained or educated in rare languages wouldn't have to be very large to meet the national security goals of the country. So it was a sort of, you might say, a boutique approach to international programs. That's obviously changed now, and in fact, with the great number of additional graduates that we need to have much broader capacity across a much larger set of higher education institutions, let alone high schools. So that we're going to try to focus our funding strategy in the future to see how federal dollars can have the most influence and reach the most number of institutions. So I think in terms of the broad and the global competency sort of track, I anticipate that we will be looking for ways to have centers of deep expertise, centers of excellence in the country, maximize their impact on a larger set of institutions that can then in turn educate larger numbers of students.